Panel, it is important to note how they describe to us, first of all, the nature of natural disasters, which is random, occurs frequently. So if we are to go by their side of the motion, it means that at certain points in time, government will be taking lives of people at random and literally almost every day, because these things happen at any time and at any day. It means habitually lives will be taken. At what point should we be able to do this? We tell you from our side that it means that at all levels or at every point in time, government should be making efforts or steps to curb some of these things and to ensure that life in itself continues. So we can get to a certain level. One thing they are missing in this debate is about the certainty of death. Okay, to a certain point, all they have is probability to be able to tell to a point. Once you cannot tell a certainty of death, you can never on any day institute euthanasia, and that is exactly what we bring to you. First of all, their main argument is about how the person becomes a burden to society, and all of their reasons are economic ones. Simple rebuttal to shut up. Simple rebuttal to that. Simple rebuttal to that. If you talk again, I'll walk out. Simple rebuttal to that. Human lives in itself should never be a means to an end, but should be an end in itself. Economics should never trump over human life. It is a wrong precedent to set in society. Number two, we argue moral status. They claim that if someone is vegetative, which is not actually what this debate is about, therefore we know who is already fought. Even when someone is vegetative, we do not take the person's organs away and say, okay, he's already dead. Only when the person is certainly dead before we can embark on such acts which violates that. I'll do more analysis on that. They claim about unavailability of resources and all of that, about quality of life. Sit down. Quality of life being the basis of life in itself, which is very stupid. It's a very stupid argument to run. Listen to this. It's a lie, because if that was the case, then babies who were born with certain deformities according to societal norms would be taken away. But then, even in all of that, you realize that the basis of life flows from your moral status and a unique biological identity, not by your quality of life, and therefore we refute it on any other day. And then they say this: once we can say that the suffering cannot be cured, then we are justified to do this. Once again, we tell you, once there's a certain level of probability with your issue and no certainty, then we cannot do that. Because in time past, there was no cure for AIDS. We knew if you had AIDS, then you were going to die, certainly, okay? Then, at one point in time, now there are drugs which can ensure that you live to a certain point in time. It means if we had said you are surely going to die and killed all those members of society, we wouldn't have been able to do that. OG is fought in this debate without any doubt. Now, Duke's speech was enough to win us this round, because it tells you three things fundamentally: about the uncertainty of death, which I've already explained in my rebuttal; two, about the responsibility of government. He tells you the drive for economics or the drive for profit in itself is limitless. It means it is going at any point in time to trump everything. And one thing we should not do is to place the value of life even in its way. Number two, government's responsibility to protect personhood, even from the person himself. That is why we do not allow suicide in most cases. So because government in itself grants personhood, it is not right and seeks to protect it. It is not right for government to take this thing away, even to an extent, okay? And number two, it tells you about how it's very hard for individuals to make rational and long-term choices. It means the individual is always looking for short-term gains, number one, and number two, because of the lack of information concerning the individual, is always making irrational choices concerning long-term things that have long-term effects. That's about it. Number three, he tells you about the elucidity of consent. Number one, he tells you about the pressure to abscond suffering and the hope of the unknown. Because the person does not know wherever he's going to, he feels there's a certain hope that exists with that, which in most cases we cannot prove. Therefore, these things coerce the person to take such decisions. Number two, the coercive forces of government, in order for them to save resources, they are in the end going to push for more of these policies, vis-a-vis policies which move for saving the lives of the individual. And we think this is very wrong. Henry. Let me tackle with that. I bring to you new extension. Number one, the limits of body autonomy. So to a certain point, individuals are able to cede some of their rights to government. Notice how they do not cede all of it to them. So it means individuals have a right to refuse treatment in most cases. and that is, and allow natural death to take its course. We are not preventing anyone from dying. But then, anytime a second party administers, I'll not take you guys, administers this kind of death, it means they violate body autonomy, and your right to consent comes from your body autonomy, which you yourself possess. So anything that takes it all away in itself is violating consent to a large degree. It means governments can override consent regarding issues that go on all and about with the body autonomy over you that they hold, or with the rights that they hold over you. But anything that takes it completely away from you is something that we will not subscribe to. Okay, so we think that consent exists from your right to body autonomy. So anything that takes it, and I've already told you about how you sell a part of your body autonomy to government, who should be the keepers and not relinquishers of it. We tell you more about the value of human life and moral absolutism. It means that in a society where we all believe in a constitution, we believe in a certain level of moral absolutism. It means that these kind of things can only exist in a moral relative society where we can say, let us kill because anything that brings utility is what we agree with. But then these things, we live in a society which believes in moral absolutism. It means there's a need to depict the value over every kind of instance. So it tells you that you see, murder, that in India, cows are much more preserved than in places like, say, Ghana, because there's a certain moral status that is attributed to that animal. It means at every point in time, they are going wayland to protect them. Okay, and that is exactly what we prove to you. Panel, note that in the issues of rising health care, cost and aging population, government is far more pressured to keep its resources. But then we tell you, the value of human life in itself means that human beings should never be used as a means to an end, but then an end in itself, because that is where government gets its whole moral status or whatever that you talk about. And we think this is very important. Panel, we think that moreover, you go ahead to stifle innovation, because at every point in time, the government should be moving towards steps to save lives. That is how come when soldiers were dying on the battlefields of the World War, a woman like Florence Nightingale came up with a solution like nursing, which has been able to revolutionize the world. It means that at every point in time, when we relent on human lives, we stifle innovation, then in the end go on ahead to help. We think that we should not afford government the chance to abscond from its responsibilities, and government should never be responsible for taking lives, even aside all the pragmatic bullshit that they bring to us.